Good morning and happy Friday, everyone. Thank you for joining us for 90 Stories for 90 Years. If this is your first time joining us, we are interviewing 90 students, faculty and staff, alumni, and advisors to celebrate 90 years of Fraternity and Sorority Life being on campus. So this morning I have Marissa with me. And Marissa, I'm going to go ahead and let you introduce yourself, and then we will get into all the questions.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. My name is Marissa Malta. I am from St. Louis, Missouri. I graduated DePaul University in 2016 with a Bachelor's of Science in Economics from Deer House, and then I graduated also with a BA in Arabic Studies. Following that, I moved to Washington, D.C., and I currently live and work there.
And then what chapter were you a member of?
Yeah, so I was in the Xi Delta Chapter. I went through recruitment my freshman year, and I was in my junior year, I was the financial vice president.
So you are originally from Missouri. So how did you end up at DePaul University?
Yes, so I chose DePaul after a series of going through a few different schools. When I was looking in high school, I went on a trip with my parents to Chicago, and I looked at Loyola, U of Chicago, and DePaul, and I fell in love with DePaul immediately. I just loved being in the middle of the city, and I had actually gone to Chicago when I was younger, like probably about 8, 9, or 10. And I just remember like feeling alive and like loving the buzz of the city. And DePaul felt the exact same way when I returned about 10 years again. And so that was just truly the moment when I knew. And then when I was accepted to DePaul, I really just knew that their academics and their focus were what I wanted, and it had a variety of things to offer. And then being a Blue Demon, it's really meant a lot to me. And I've recently become a member of the Washington, D.C. Alumni Chapter because I wanted to remember and be involved again in being a Blue Demon. And those things are still instilled within me. I remember doing that first class that you take at DePaul and sitting in arts and letters and being terrified and scared and really excited, and remembering this is so much fun and I just want to keep that tradition alive.
Awesome. So you told us that you moved to DC pretty shortly after graduation. So what have you been up to in DC, and how did your experience in Fraternity and Sorority Life help you achieve your career goals?
Mm-hmm. So I moved to DC to pursue my graduate degree in public policy at American University, and I graduated from there in 2018. I got a graduate internship at AARP during that time, and since then I gained full-time employment at AARP, where I now work in their Public Policy Institute. And during that time, and a huge, shout out to DePaul, is where I learned about retirement securities and economics, which is what my degree is in. And where it really solidified is that that's the world of policy that I wanted to focus in. So that's where I work now in the Public Policy Institute at AARP, and I'm on the financial securities team, meaning I do a host of things ranging in the retirement securities from Social Security to 401ks to state retirement initiatives that we do, as well as social media, to a lot of other things regarding Gen Z and Social Security and millennial initiatives that we lead. But I also really think that being a leader in Xi Delta taught me a lot about managing and growing and what it means to be a leader. I think when you are in a sorority, it can be really fun and exciting. There's lots of things to do and lots of events, and fun can entail, but it's also a lot of hard work because you're leading and managing. Being the vice president of finances for the sorority means a lot because you're looking not just at the few next couple weeks or months, but a year out or even 2 to 3 years out. And you might not even be there anymore in the chapter, but this might be something for future members. And that's really important to remember and understand. And I think sometimes you have to ground yourself and understand that you're leaving a legacy behind. And the same way that the founders of most sororities did when they were creating them, it's super important to establish and make sure that you're leaving this long tail behind and not just focusing on short-term goals. It's been important in my work now too at the Policy Institute that I'm working in, is that you focus long-term. Policy, especially here in the United States, is a long-term goal. It is never a short-term goal, as we're seeing now in 2020. These things take time. They are carefully crafted. So it's always fun to have these conversations where you dovetail the two things. And I accredit a lot of the patience and hard work that I did in Alpha Xi Delta to the management and skills that I gained there.
That's awesome. And I think it's really cool, like how much your current employment experience mirrors your undergraduate experience. Like, yes, it's very different work, but same team issues, or make like having that patience and that confidence to make changes. It's, even though it's a very different setting, there's still those similarities between your undergraduate experience in Alpha Xi Delta and now in your full-time role.
Yes, yeah, totally.
So who was a mentor and an advisor that made an impact on your experience, and why?
Yeah, so I would say there were 3, and they were the chapter advisors. So when I started Alpha Xi Delta, when I was a freshman at Alpha Xi Delta, I had only been there, I think, about a year or 2. So the 3 advisors were Julie, Shayna, and Georgia. And Georgia and Shayna were the 3 advisors, and they were really great at like I talked about, the long term, the understanding of setting up a great foundation and really getting down these solid pillars to thinking long term on goals and strategies. And then with Julie, Julie was our financial advisor. So I worked heavily with her for almost 2 years because when I was the chair and then transitioned to the vice president, I worked a lot with her, and she was great at getting to know who I was, both personally and professionally in the Alpha Xi Delta setting. And she, whether she knows it or not, had a huge impact in like my role in wanting to work more in the world of economics and financing. Now, I didn't go into finance. I actually really disliked finance in my business degree. Even though I was good at it, I truly never want to go into finance. I really want to stick in the economics and the theoretical side of it. But and she was on the banking and on the industry side, which is funny, but I learned so much from her, and she was a huge role model to me because she was so grounded and so thoughtful. And she's a huge person that I think fondly of quite a bit when I'm doing huge tasks and roles, because she was really someone who was always really thoughtful and sweet. And even when things were tough and people weren't responding to emails and things were almost really difficult and unmanageable, and you're younger and you want to say things or react a certain way, she was really great at thinking thoughtfully and being super responsive. So she was a huge role model to me, and making sure and telling me how to thoughtfully convey and be a leader for Alpha Xi Delta.
That's awesome. So what does sisterhood mean to you?
Yeah. So this question was really fun to think of for me because I in Alpha Xi Delta sisterhood has really changed in the definition for me. So in college, it was all the things that we did. I loved all the events. I loved being on e-board and everything and doing all those and being around everyone, the huge chapter, and living 5 blocks from people in Chicago. And then, moving away and moving to DC was super hard because I knew nobody. And a really good friend of mine now was somebody who my friend Grace Bova, who was our chapter president when I was, I think, a sophomore or junior, she introduced me to this person. And I moved to DC and I didn't know anybody, and Grace was able to introduce me to somebody because she was in our sorority at a different school from Texas. And Mandy is now one of my best friends, and I've become so close to her. And so sisterhood has, even though the word, means one thing, it's really changed for me in a lot of the ways, because I'm able to say, I've had these connections and these friends from literally sitting there through recruitment, starstruck that all these people can have these great connections, not just in my sorority, but in all the sororities that you see during recruitment. And now to the point where I have all these great friendships. And even if they're just on social media, the group of 6 friends that I walked away with from Alpha Xi Delta, they're my tried and true best friends. We live across the coast from each other. It's really hard to see each other, especially during this year. But they're my best friends. That's sisterhood. Having Mandy in Washington, D.C., that's sisterhood. Having connections when you want to reach out to someone to say, hey, I don't know anyone in this town. Can you help me out? That's the definition of sisterhood to me, is really being there and really being able to help friends out. And you all went through the same process. We all have the same rituals and the same traditions. We were all there, and we all have those key things that are still instilled in us. And something that's really special to AZD is the quill. And I think that's still true to me to this day. And a huge thing that I work on is policy in DC, and the quill symbolizes writing and communication. And that's something I work on every day. So whether I knew it or not, I think I was meant to be an AZD. And while it's a symbol, it symbolizes a lot for me. So sisterhood truly does have, I think, a lot bigger definition than just, a few Greek letters to your name.
And that's awesome how you have seen sisterhood expand beyond DePaul, because how you have now met someone in DC that isn't a member of Alpha Xi Delta, but went to a different university. I think that's a really cool part that happens after graduation, meeting other women that were in your chapter or other chapters, but still having that similar connection that you were all in a sorority, and then this is why you think the way you do. And so I think just really, I think that's why I think FSL is so different and unique from other student organizations, because there is this extension beyond graduation.
Oh, yes, definitely.
So what is your best advice for someone who is interested in joining a fraternity or sorority, especially during this time of a pandemic? I mean, we are about to have panel recruitment 100% on Zoom, which who would have thought we would ever be doing recruitment on Zoom and not in the student center? So what is some of that advice for those students who are interested or are a little bit on the fence?
Yes, I would definitely say do it. And that's way easier said than done. When I went through recruitment, as DePaul, we start later than some schools. So I watched a lot of my friends go through recruitment, and I feel like the biggest thing that I try to hold steady with was just being true to myself, like really not trying to watch what others were doing during recruitment, really sticking to my lane. And it can be repetitive. You do tell people that you are from St. Louis, Missouri. You do say the same things over and over again. But, as the conversations draw closer and closer towards the last days, they do become more special and they do become closer. So Zoom conversations, I think we've probably all gotten a little better at them, which is nice, especially at this point too. I think we're all hopefully able to open up a little bit more, and it's not as awkward sitting for few minutes of silence staring at each other. I think it's right off the bat of like, this room is cold I'm sitting in, or we're all having fun in this situation at this point. And with that being said, to recruitment, really truly being honest and open about who you are, because if you aren't, I think I watched some girls, not a lot, but some girls who weren't, and then they might not have found their true home. And that was upsetting because they had to drop out, or they didn't feel as though they fit in. And I can say the best thing that I learned was that I found my home with Alpha Xi Delta. And it was a really cool experience because I trusted the process. Several times I could have been like, what the heck is this process? And it's weird. And it probably will feel weird on this Zoom. But I would say be really easy and flexible. We're all in this together, and it's not going to be perfect. There will be technical glitches. Be really kind and easy soul. Recruitment is long and hard on everyone. I was there. You're usually at 2 or 3 hours of sleep a night. I was a Rho Gamma on the other side as well in the process, and you're on 2 or 3 hours of sleep a night and a lot of caffeine. And I would just say be really kind to yourself and trust the process. I know you're going to be said, that's going to be said at you a lot. And you're going to say, I don't know what this process is, but do it. And then 5 days goes by, and then 4 years goes by, and it's crazy. But it's so worth it, because looking back, 4 years was way too fast, but I loved every second of it. So I say do it.
Good. Yeah, and that's great.
So
I think it just helps you, especially like I think in this virtual time, really helps you like find a sense of community and belonging. Because I think it's really challenging, for individuals that are moving to a new city, or students that just started at DePaul, where you may not be, meeting students in classes or at different events. Like this is a great opportunity to meet friends right away that have, common interests and goals, and that can, help you navigate the university, especially in this virtual time.
Oh, yes, definitely.
So what is your favorite memory from DePaul, but outside of Fraternity and Sorority Life?
That one was really hard. I actually texted my group of friends because it was such a blur. I was like, there's so many things, from walking to the lake with my friends in the summer, and then stopping for sushi and ramen, to the education I got. Honestly, I am so thankful for the 2 degrees that I got from DePaul University. I worked my butt off for those 2 degrees, and I know they were well earned and deserved. And I can tell you, those classes weren't easy. Like, I think that's one of my favorite things about DePaul University is it was tough, and it was hard, and it was challenging, while on top of doing things in extracurricular life, I was also doing those 2 degrees, and I'm so thankful for the education that I received from DePaul. I think you can put a lot into yourself. And I think that's my favorite thing about DePaul is they give you that opportunity to do that. You can put in as little or as much as you want to. And the biggest thing I say, and I think when I talk to people in the Washington alum chapter, is most people put in a lot as well. Like, that's my favorite part is a good chunk of the people that I met and I've crossed paths with who went to DePaul or who have ever met someone who went to DePaul is they give 110% of themselves. So this question was really hard because the 4 years, can I say the whole 4 years going to DePaul were my favorite? Like, I mean, even, going to get a smoothie at the gym, to some of my professors are still my mentors. Like, halfway through this pandemic, a part of me was like, I think I want to switch and just like become a health consultant and like drop all this in my, like, which was totally just a pandemic mindset, hot 20-minute life issue I had. And I called one of my professors who was a huge mentor of mine. And he was like, oh, you're crazy. Calm down. Let's talk about it. And we talked out and he helped me figure what I wanted to do and some next steps. And so like I've made lifelong connections and, I hosted right before the pandemic, I hosted a group of grad students at my employer, which is great because I'm still so happy to see and bring in students who are willing to learn and see and understand the opportunities that are offered when you have the DePaul education. So I can't pinpoint just one thing because the whole 4 years were really the best opportunity that I had.
No, that's a great answer because it's hard to pinpoint because 4 years goes by so quickly. There's just like so many different experiences that you have within your 4 years. It just goes by so quickly. I still can't believe I'm like out of college, but I've been out of college for a while now, but I'm like, oh my God, it like flies by.
Right.
So in closing, hopefully this one is maybe a little bit easier. What was your favorite memory of being in your organization?
Yes. So I definitely would say Alpha Xi Delta holds a really near and dear spot in my heart. I think when you're in college, a good chunk of your life is consumed when you're in the FSL and you're in the Greek community, is really consumed by it. You go to the library with your friends, you've got hours you do, your community service, date nights, Greek week, all of those things. The rituals, everything, all the traditions, everything that was laid out before you. And then when you become an alum and you move away and you kind of have an identity crisis because those things aren't something that you do. You don't go to chapter every Sunday. I think like the first 6 months of being in Washington, D.C., I think every Sunday night about like 6 p.m., I would have a panic attack because I'm like, I have to be somewhere. Like, and there was nowhere to be, right? I didn't have to go to the student center and line up in alphabetical order and go to chapter, which was very odd. And I didn't have meetings I had to be in. But one of my favorite things of Alpha Xi Delta is the lifelong friendships that it's given me. And those traditions that I had no idea that I had in me, and that meant so much to me. Like I spoke about the quill. I had no idea that I needed that or knew it was part of me until I found it and it was given to me, and I treasure that. And though I don't think about it every day, like I feel like I did a lot in college, it still hits me every once in a while. When I see friends or new members of DePaul's Alpha Xi Delta on Facebook or Instagram, it really like warms my heart to see that that foundation is still there and that the organization is still going strong. And a huge shout out to DePaul's Fraternity and Sorority Life. My favorite thing about DePaul's Greek life is that it's a community. I think I rave about you all the time because it wasn't just Alpha Xi Delta. Like I didn't just have this group of friends and nobody else from like I couldn't have friends in other sororities, right? Like DePaul is a community in the Greek life. I have friends from Delta Gamma and DZ and ASA and Chi O. Like I still have friends in every sorority. Like the reason I'm on here is because of Vanessa. Like and other people who already interviewed, I remember them from Greek life and with MLC as well. Like it is a community, and I preach about that all the time. Like when you're joining DePaul's Greek life, it's not just going to be your sorority; it is the community itself, and I love that. And so I think that's a huge thing to remember when signing up for this. And I personally can't thank you all enough for that. And I think it's a huge thing and important to Alpha Xi Delta as well, is to make sure that it's a community. It's not just like me, myself, and I in this, because we can't do it alone. So I love it as a group.
Well, thank you. And I think, our community has grown so much in the 5 years I have been at DePaul. I mean, we've expanded to new chapters and new councils. So it's really cool to see the community come together and welcome, new members and new chapters and new councils, and figure out like how we are all going to work together, because DePaul's Greek life is very different. There's no housing, but you all still find a way to connect on and off campus and really integrate into the city. And, it's through like helping each other get internships or doing community service projects, or, figuring out like how you can also become an orientation leader if one of your sisters was an orientation leader. So I think there's some really good connections and everything. So I'm glad you had a wonderful experience and are continuing to have that experience in DC, and then also with the DePaul alumni chapter. So we really appreciate you coming on here today and sharing your story with us.
Yes. Well, I thank you so much. This was so much fun. And I hope you have a great weekend and an awesome Friday.
You too. Well, thank you everyone for joining us, and we will have more 90 stories coming up in the new year.